But I'll start with the beginning. I was very, I think, influenced by my dad's obsession with filmmaking at a young age. He was filming us, like his own family life, from my birth. Actually, you will see it in a few clips in the film as well, in the masterclass as well. But I think the first thing I saw when I came out of my mother was my father's Super 8 camera, in a way. And I think that was what defined my life. But it was...
Sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you, Dad.
For a psychologist, you should have known better.
Yeah, he planted the seed. No, but I was, when I was in my teens, I was very fascinated by photography and by music. And I thought, okay, I want to go into music. I really wanted to be a composer. But I didn't think I was good enough when I decided that. So I applied for the sound department of the film school. But through that first year of film school, I got to know the directing side of filmmaking, and especially documentary directing. And for me, that was an epiphany. For me, everything came together. Photography, film, being fascinated by things around you, if it's your family or the rest of the world, everything came together for me in documentary directing. And in that sense, that changed my mind about my own life, about what I wanted to be. So I decided to quit sound and study directing. That's how I started. I never intended to be a filmmaker when I entered film school, actually. But through film school, I had many of these kind of epiphanies. I won't show you a clip of my my Film Academy stuff because then we would go into like multiple hours of analyzing what kind of filmmaker I became. I really want to focus on this film I now made. But I started off being a filmmaker that really was dogmatic, in that sense that I didn't want to interfere with the subject that I was filming. I thought of myself as being a direct cinema / cinema verité kind of filmmaker, being interested in social topics. The opposite of filmmakers that film their own families, film their own stories. I thought that's great that other people think their own lives are interesting. That's not me. Of course, it all changed. But that was how I finished film school, by making a short film about a tiny little village that was on the verge of being demolished because of the advancing Antwerp harbor. And that was the filmmaker I was going to be, I thought, at that moment. And that's why I continued to film that story years after the finishing film school, because I thought, you know, I don't know about your situation or about the people that are studying here. We were very limited in that sense that we only had, I think, 15 or 20 shooting days. The film couldn't exceed the 25 minutes. It was my film school was very focused on the fiction or feature film kind of structure. So I needed to work with a cameraman, with a soundman, with an editor. Everything was very structured in that sense as a fiction film. So I felt I was totally limited in what I could do. That's why I continued to film, and that's why that became my first feature-length film. It was only at the end of making that feature film that it struck me that I'm so fascinated, I got so close to this main character in that little Belgian village that I actually called her my grandmother, almost. We became so intimate. I felt for her, she felt for me. I still, to this day, I still visit her. That it's weird that I can call her almost my grandmother, and I don't know anything about my own grandmother, my real grandmother that was still alive at that moment. And that's what struck me. That's like, okay, if I'm so fascinated by this character, but don't know anything about, you know, my own grandmother, my own family life, my own roots, while my grandmother was still alive at that moment, still very much alive, I have to say. Maybe this is a time of you know, I have to delve into my own story. Still, I didn't think it was going to be a film for an audience, for somebody else than maybe me or my family. I still was in the phase of denial. I thought, yeah, personal films are for certain kind of filmmakers, not for me. In Holland, you have this definition of these personal films. They call them ego documentaries. You know, this it's enough to get me up in the tree. I hated the definition already. And like I said, I didn't see myself as being such a documentary maker. So everything changed when I started making this film. And I think I started making this film. I won't talk too much in abstractions because I think we should show you something of it. I started making it in a very naive way, thinking that I could approach this story in the same way as I approached my previous feature documentary, which was in a very observing cinéma vérité kind of manner. Don't interfere, don't interview, just observe, have the patient eye, just look at what happens, have a focus, have a way of filming it like a cinematography, a way of using sound, but just be patient and have a distance to your subject. So that's how I started making this personal film as well. Of course, when I talk about it now, it's outrageous. How can I see myself apart from my subject? It's impossible. And it wasn't because of my own convictions that I changed. It was because of the main character of my film that literally pulled me into the story, that everything changed. And in a way, my grandmother herself confronted me with my own naivety of thinking that I was apart from this story. So that's in a nutshell where I came from as a filmmaker.
But it's quite a radical journey, say, from learning filmmaking through fiction, through individual roles, to become a self-shooter.
Yeah.
Where basically you're behind the camera, you do
Of course.
sound, you're very much a one-man band
Yeah.
in what you are doing.
Yeah.
And also thinking in terms of a long-term film. It
Yeah.
takes years to do it.
It took years, and it's not that I thought after that first film I would make this film quicker. I thought I'd learned something. I thought I'd become a professional, but I felt total like an amateur again. And that's a thing I think is great about our profession. Is everybody here a film student or filmmaker? Everybody?
Oh, everyone.
Yeah, almost. Well, at least it's a promotional talk for our profession. The good thing is that you, in a way, you don't learn anything. You just learn to be patient and to trust fate in a way and perseverance. But for me at least, and I've talked to colleagues even, colleagues of mine that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, you have to start all over again with every film. And you can see that as something difficult or frustrating, but in a way, to me, it makes it never boring and never a dull moment. And it feels like being a modern day explorer. Because, physically, geographically, our Earth, our planet, everything has been explored already. Everything has been mapped out. But mentally, there's so many stories, there's so many things we can still explore. So I feel very lucky. But like you said, every film to me is a whole journey on itself, and I can't detach myself from the film at a certain moment anymore. It becomes my life. It doesn't feel like a profession anymore. I just become one with the process. And I think that the films change me as well as a person. So especially this film that I now made. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just show a little clip
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
give a flavor of
Yeah.
what the film.
Yeah. I have a kind of structure, but I'll go against the structure.
Oh, sorry.
No. I can always go back.
Sorry, I'll let you get on with it.
No. We can do it in another chronology. The birth of an idea. Yeah, I'll start here. But first, I'd like to ask you guys, because many of you are filmmakers. How many of you are filmmakers? Can you put up your hands? So that's, the majority. Okay. How many of you have ever thought or already have experience with making a film about a family-related subject? That's about half. Okay. The rest is in denial. No, just joking. Don't start. That's interesting because to me, like I said, I was a long time in denial. I didn't think of myself as being able to make such a film. But like I said, the previous film I made me question my own life, my own family, my own grandmother in a way. But it all started out with chaos, like this. There's no structure at all. There's just the one in the center. That's my grandmother as a 6-year-old child with the sad-looking face. To me, that was the only thing that was clear to me. It's about her and everything around her. But there was no structure. There was only chaos. There were pictures. Like our family is obsessed with recording itself, either on film, photography, even sound recordings. But I started out with this chaos, with no meaning, no story, no structure, no protagonist in a way. So I needed to structure this chaos into something that at least was a kind of a starting point for the journey I was going on. So all this, in a way, I try to get it down to 3 generations, in a way, 3 very important protagonists to me. Of course, in the center, again, that's my grandmother, recorded by her husband at that time. That's her father, my great-grandfather. That's him. And of course, at this moment, I still thought, like I said, I started out naively. I thought I wasn't part of the equation, so my image is not there. But to me, right in the start and seeing all these archives, finding out that I'm not very original with my tendency to film stuff. It's my father, my grandmother, and my great-grandfather already. It became, of course, this is it's a factual thing. They all filmed. But to me, it became a kind of ambition or idea that I wanted to explore the emotional relationships between those generations, because I always felt there was a lot of sadness, a lot of frustration, a lot of trauma in my family, but we weren't able to talk about it. And everything was always pointing out at her. Every story was always related to her. I remember when I was a child or when I was a teenager, you would, for instance, you would always relate your own struggles back to your own childhood. Still now. But there was a big contrast between what I knew from stories told by you compared to my own experiences, because she was a stranger to me. I didn't really know her. So there was a big question mark concerning her, and an even greater question mark concerning the previous generation before that. So in a way, that was my starting point. I want to explore this character that I know so many stories of. The stories that I knew were she put her 2 sons in an orphanage, in a children's home. She was a man-eater. She was a femme fatale. She was a famous model in the 60s, in the 50s. And she moved far away from the family to her place in South Africa. That's why I didn't know her, because she was physically not there. So there's all these stories that made this myth out of her. That was a starting point, demystifying my own grandmother. I'm going to show you the first, I think, 2.5, 3 minutes of the film, the prologue of the film, because I think in the prologue there's already a lot of, at least a lot of kind of, what do you call it, underneath the skin emotion, something that I wanted to reach with the film, but not already telling the whole story, because you're just starting the story. So in form, in content, and in emotion, I try to introduce the complexity of my story already. So I'm curious, because you haven't seen anything, or have you seen a trailer of the film maybe? No? Nothing? Yes? Oh, okay. I'm curious to what you can already read from these first few minutes of the film, not only concerning the content of the film, but also concerning the form, the way in which I try to find a cinematic form for the story I was going to tell. I'll just show it, and we can talk about it afterwards and analyze it a little bit. But this to me became, in a way, a focus. The thing my dad says in the beginning. Oh, can we dim the lights? Sorry. Probeer eens wat te zeggen, oma.
Mami, hallo. Ik ben het. Je kent me wel. Ik ben de zoon van een moeder met een masker op. Wat ik zou willen, dat ze dan, voordat ze overlijdt, dat masker af zou doen en dat we dan misschien huilend in mekaars armen zouden kunnen vallen. En zij eigenlijk tragisch, dat ze dit moest doen met haarzelf. En ik natuurlijk ook tragisch dat ik daar het product van ben geworden. Maar het happy end, dat het uiteindelijk dan toch goed komt. Want haar ontmaskering is ook mijn ontmaskering.
Yeah, I don't want to get into it too much already. But to me, what seemed very obvious right from the start was that there was a huge emotional gap between the people in my family, especially between the one I knew best, my own father, and his mother. And what I knew, what I felt as a child already, and it became more and more obvious when I grew older, was that my father, all during his life, had attempted to get closer to his mother. Different attempts, and if you see the film tonight, you'll see what kind of attempts they were. And it became a kind of a pattern. I saw him trying very hard, and then being close, and then being disappointed again, and trying to detach from his mother again. And to me, that gap became, in a way, very, very clear, very something that was central to the film, and the longing that was created by that gap, and the questions: how did it develop into this? What happened? And what happened in the past, what's happening in the present? Because the moment when you turn on the camera, maybe you have experience with this as well, the moment you turn on the camera, things start changing. And like I said, I was very dogmatic. I always wanted to be an invisible filmmaker, trying to capture reality as it is. But through this film, I don't believe in that bullshit anymore. Because you're always changing, of course. Everything is changing the moment when you enter the room. Things start to change. And well, I won't go into that discussion. But to start the film with the ocean, to me, was in a way a metaphorical way to create a sense of this gap, this huge void between a mother and a son who is attempting to reach her. Mommy, mommy, can you speak? Where are you? Why don't you answer? Which is much more important than the factual scene itself, that's after that she's already in a wheelchair. It was the end of her life, actually. But the mommy, mommy, him calling her mommy, reaching out, and she's not reacting, to me became extremely central to the whole film. Then when you see my father saying, I'm the son of a mother with a mask, of course, when somebody who's close to me is telling me, the person you're filming has a mask, then it makes me want to unmask this person, which is creating a kind of a promise to the audience that there might be some unmasking to be done in the film, at least an attempt in doing that. But the most important thing that's also in there is that he's not saying only that he's the son of a mother with a mask, he's actually masked himself, and by unmasking her, it would be like unmasking him. And then that's when it, to me at least, as the son, became emotional and very valuable. Because, of course, my grandmother is a stranger. I don't have this relationship to her as being her son. But the relationship I have with my own dad is very important to me. Being the son, you know, my father being, of course, a role model for me. I would love for him to be unmasked because it means I would get closer to my own dad. So these two things already in the beginning of the film for me made my journey in a way legitimate. Like, okay, there's a reason why I have to do what I'm doing. I have to go and know and try to unmask her, and maybe with this unmasking of her, demystifying her, getting to know her, I will become closer to my own father. And of course, indirectly in the end of the film, but then you have to see the whole film, maybe I became closer to myself, into knowing who I am, where I come from, also my emotions. So that's why I wanted to show you this, you know, this prologue of the film, and it's in a way it's asking a lot from an audience, I think, because you're not yet there that you understand who's important, who's the grandma, the grandson. Of course, you see the three of us already in the beginning, but still, it's too much to already what is verwachten? What is expect the audience to totally empathize with me, my father, or my grandmother. It's just creating a kind of a reference, more an emotional reference than a factual reference, and only later in the film, these very vague, maybe abstract references will become more clear. But it's a choice, of course. It's a choice of doing it this way. But to me, it was a very important way in which to already create a sense of form as well as content. Creating metaphors that weren't literally telling you what to think or what to understand, but to create this like sub-layer of emotions that hopefully would be referred to later on in the film. Are there questions at this time, or do you want to?
There is another beautiful visual metaphor in the film, which is where when you get to your grandmother, and we see where she lives in this type of gated.
Yeah, that's my next clip. Yeah, shall I show it?
Yes.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah.
I was wondering at what point because your initial fascination was with your grandmother,
Yeah.
not sort of, you know, your relationship with her being sort of unknown. But I was interested in at what point you brought your father really into it, because obviously, you know, you were saying you realized it was going to be an unmasking with him, but also maybe this is a question for you also. At what point did you realize the weight that this project was going to be on your own sort of emotional journey? And were you up for it initially, or was it, you know,
You're asking the question
something
to him?
to both, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, that unmasking, I had no illusion that it really would succeed to unmask my mother, because I tried it all my life and never got an inch further. And so why would he succeed when I, also as a psychologist, couldn't succeed, couldn't get success? So I was a little bit skeptical, but I liked very much his interest, at least as a son, in his family and in me and in my grandmother. So I thought, okay, he's very well, if he really wants a thing like that from his heart, going into and take the time and the film and the cost, great, go for it. But I had not much illusion, I have to say, in unmasking my mother and in that sense unmasking myself. By the way, why would I think I am maybe also masked like my mother? And watching myself just before, I thought, what's my mask then actually? Why would he unmask me through my mother? Well, what is my mask? And I think if your mother is a mystery, or your father is a mystery, or you have no father, or you have no mother, then something in yourself is actually not developed. So I think in that sense you can understand that unmasking your parents, unmasking your things which are not developed into yourself, that's a way of unmasking yourself too. So knowing my mother, and maybe that's why Tom said, I all my life tried to get in contact with her, to get really a connection with her. That was also indeed not only to heal the whole family, but also to heal myself. So if I know her, if I get in connection with her, if I get to know her, I get to know myself, because my mother is of course in myself. I'm of course my mother and my father, for a part. You are of course yourself. You have your own personality, but your personalities of your parents are also in you. And if you want to know yourself, you have to know those very important people in your life.
And to add to that, because you have no reference to the film, of course, it's in the film, and I don't have a clip to show you now, but he didn't know his father as well. His father vanished when he was 3, so the only one he knew was his mother. And
my brother. So my brother and my mother, in fact, were my father and mother. So I my whole life I was trying to connect with my mother, but also to connect with my brother.
And you'll see parts of his brother later on in the masterclass.
Yeah.
But I think what's also not in the clip that I'm going to show is the fact that you and your brother were put in an orphanage by your mother, and afterwards never felt, even though they were taken back to the home after 2 years, they never felt they had a mother anymore after that. So it's actually having no parents at all, in a way, emotionally. Referring to your question, the emotional impact of this journey, of course, was unforeseeable. Otherwise, I would never have started this. I've never hated such a project as this film as well, but I've also never had such an important project in my life, and might never have such an important project in my life anymore after this. So in a way, it's the most valuable thing I've ever done. But the sheer complexity, not only of being the director who tries to structure this chaos and mess, but also as a human being, putting yourself amidst this complexity and these loyalties and dilemmas on every level. Not only, like I said, not only professional dilemmas, how do I shoot this, how do I structure this, how do I edit this, but also ethical dilemmas. Who gives me the right to be delving all this up? Who gives me the right to be doing this? Just because I own a camera, just because I call myself a filmmaker? No, of course not. And that's a difficult thing, and nobody's gonna tell you you have the right. You have to find your own way of dealing with that. And like I said, I never expected it to the film and the whole situation of pulling me inside this story as it did when I started it. I started as a stranger, as an observer, and I'll show you clips in which is literally my grandmother is pulling me inside. But I'll show you the next clip in which more elements of her and of the family story are becoming clear. Love, hate. Where is this? Yeah. Yeah, sorry, this is all like a structure of a different masterclass than what I'm giving now, but it's all okay. I called it Love, Hate, the Protagonist because I believe that the most interesting protagonists, for me at least, are people that you love and hate at the same time. They're ambiguous. They won't be caught. They're always smarter. They're always more charismatic, more powerful than you are. You have your camera to capture it, but people like this, people like the protagonist of my first feature film, were always in a way surprising me and causing frustration because I felt I had no control over the reality that I was trying to capture. But now I'm convinced that that's a good thing. It's a good thing if the protagonist is unpredictable and has these both sides. The side in which you love them, in which you empathize with their stories, with their emotions, and the side in which you hate them, in which you want them to leave you alone as an audience. But I'll show you a clip which has this love-hate relationship in itself. And it's referring to what you said, the metaphor of her surroundings. And there's more metaphors inside, but we'll discuss it afterwards. Yeah, that's something she said. She'll say it in.
Zolang ik me kan herinneren, woont mijn oma in Zuid-Afrika. Ver weg van de familie in Nederland, die al jarenlang geen contact meer met haar heeft. Inmiddels is ze 95 jaar oud.
Hé, waar blijf je ochtendzoen?
Ochtendzoen?
Nou goed, het is toch traditie.
Oma heeft me gevraagd om samen met haar naar Nederland te reizen.
Kijk hoe mooi dit is. Op een zwarte pullover. Trouwens, dit moet in Holland ook nog zijn. In Holland.
Ja. En hoe zie je dat voor je?
Nog deze zie ik het helemaal niet. Ik hoop het is lekker. Ik hoop... Kijk, ze dezelfde kleur. Bijna. Hoe ik het zie.
Ja, hoe zie je de uiteindelijk het bezoek?
Zou ik zeggen. Ik geloof niet dat zijn zo... Dat die mensen van mij... enthousiast erbij zijn. Dat denk ik niet. Dat is altijd zo geweest. Maar misschien omstandigheden. Maar luister, dat is nou een moeilijke part van mijn gedachten, mijn gevoelens. En we willen maar verder niet over praten, want kijken wat er gebeurt. Misschien gebeurt er iets goeds uit die reis. Maar dit was nou niet helemaal de bedoeling van die reis, denk ik.
Maar wat is dan wel de bedoeling?
Ik wou afscheid nemen. Dat wou ik. De laatste reis waarschijnlijk die ik kan doen.
Maar wil je eens dieper ingaan op dat afscheid nemen? Wat bedoel je daarmee?
Nou, ik zeg bye bye, jullie zien mij niet meer. Gaan we nou niet verder in mij komen? Dit gaat weg, dat gaat weg.
Maar ik vind het ook belangrijk om de minder uplifting dingen te bespreken.
Kan ons nou werkelijk stoppen, Tom?
Ja?
Werkelijk? Oh. Wat hoor ik nou?
Je hoort de kastdeur dichtgaan.
Het was een telefoon.
Nee, het was de kastdeur.
Wat hoor ik?
Het was de kastdeur.
Die lucht nee.
Je moet toch echt dat gehoorapparaat gaan gebruiken, oma?
Hij is hier.
Ik maak deze film omdat er heel veel dingen altijd zijn verzwegen.
Gezwegen.
Gezwegen. Over alle pijnlijke dingen wordt altijd gezwegen.
Oh, dat bedoel je. Dat wil je openbaar.
Niks wordt besproken. Het is altijd alsof alles goed is, terwijl er eigenlijk enorm veel verdriet is.
Is het?
En iedereen doet maar alsof.
I see. Ik ook.
Ja.
Nee.
Het is altijd uiterlijk.
Ah, niet bij mij.
Ik wil weten wat er aan de hand is.
Dat is jouw probleem.
Ja.
Niet mijne.
Nou ja, ik wil de waarheid.
Waarheid is personeel. Waarheid is... Er bestaat geen echte waarheid. Aha. Forget it. Jij komt nooit achter. Achter. Impossible. Al probeer je.
Ja, deze foto's die ik nu weer zie, terwijl ik ze al toch al heel wat vaak gezien heb, die onthullen eigenlijk toch steeds weer nieuwe elementen. Je ziet steeds weer nieuwe dingen erin. En dat vind ik eigenlijk wel verbluffend. Het kind waar ik naar kijk en die man van 70 die ik nou ben. Ze zeggen dat het kind eigenlijk, wat je zelf was, eigenlijk de vader is van de persoon die je nou bent. Hè? En dat is natuurlijk een rare paradox.
So till here. So there's many elements we already talked about in this clip. As relating to the love-hate relationship, the charisma, the character of my grandmother who didn't want to be caught, and who was always, you know, in a way was always fighting with me. She wasn't directable. What do you call it? You couldn't direct her. You couldn't. If you would push her this way, she would go that way. If you would ask this, she would answer that. And in a way, to me, it meant a great struggle because I wasn't getting what I wanted, but I got so much more. In the end, I became aware of that, of course, but it took me a great time to acknowledge that I think that the struggle between her and me actually became a part of the whole film. The relationship between this mystical grandmother and her grandson actually became a part of the whole storytelling. Of course, I forgot all about the fact that we were perfect strangers to each other, and that there was actually a relationship being formed in front of the camera and behind the camera. What I also like to point out is again some promises that I'm making, or in a way that the film makes to the audience, is that she is saying the thing you want, you can't get it. The thing you're looking for, you will never find it. And of course, if you tell a child that, he will start looking, he will do it. If you tell a child, don't walk up the stairs, he's going to go walk up the stairs. Or especially when you see it's going to fall, you can try to make him understand. If you will keep on doing this, you will fall, you will hurt yourself. But still, the child, if it doesn't have the experience of being hurt, he still needs to experience being hurt, and that's what happened, of course, with me. Of course, I used it in a filmic way, but my grandmother tells me, don't make this film, don't go on that journey. And what did I do? I went on that journey, only to, in the end of the film, and I won't show you the end, but to realize she was right. There's no point in making this film. But at least I became a little bit wiser than I was, in the beginning of the journey. Sadder but wiser, yeah, you're right. But what I also like to point out, in reference to what I said earlier about creating metaphors that don't mean anything at the moment when you see them because it's too early in the film, also here you saw after she tells me there's no truth, there's no use in trying to find it because you will never find what you're looking for. You see this black and white Super 16 shots, which have no factual reference. You don't know what you're looking at. The only thing you're seeing is mist. Mist, and it's a track, it's a train track and mist. It's not from now, you see it's probably half a century or more ago. And it's not important to understand how it was factually made, what it refers to, because now in the film we're still on that first introduction in which creating this kind of sub-layer, this kind of under the skin feeling is more important than the factual. We're still in the beginning. But what I wanted to do is to create a metaphor for the mist she is creating, of course, because she's in a way pulling up a curtain between where I am and where I want to go. I want to go behind the persistent tales. I want to go behind the appearance. And what she's actually doing actively is creating mist. That's one of the reasons why I used that shot. Only later in the film, you will understand that it's not just some material, that 16mm train material. It's material shot, it's footage from her own father. But it will have that meaning later on in the film, because then it has a reference. The shot you see after that, after the misty train tracks, is a shot of the picture, also black and white, of the child, the portrait of her with her sad eyes. Like as I showed you in the beginning of the film, to me that was, even though I didn't know, I was still in this chaos, I didn't know where to go, that picture became very meaningful as a kind of vocal point where I wanted to go. So that picture in the film doesn't have any reference still, because you don't know the picture, you haven't seen it yet, you don't even know it's my grandmother at the moment that you see that black and white footage of that picture. But because it's there, And it's just after the moment in which she tells us that, or me, it's no point looking for the truth because I will not help you find it in subtext. I will certainly not be easy for you to find that truth that you're looking for, and maybe there is no truth at all. But because that shot of that sad little child is close to what she has just said, what she has forced me to understand, or tries to make me understand, it has a meaning already. But it's only, again, later in the film in which that particular shot of that particular child portrait will have its meaning, will have not only the meaning, the factual meaning, historical meaning that it's her as a child, but it will have a huge emotional meaning, referring to a trauma that only at that point in the film she opens the door to. And she actually partly puts down her mask. So it's maybe too much abstract stuff I'm talking about now, but it's a way of explaining why this edit, why these kind of shots, why the amount of different images, like the video that I'm shooting, the HD color video, the archival material. And it's creating an idea already for the code of the film, because I think in every film, even though you shoot it in one style, one color, one kind of camera setup, still in every film in the beginning you, in a way, as an audience, you want to understand the grammatics, what do you call it, the language of the film. You want to understand what language, in a more metaphoric way, what language the director is telling you the story. And that's what I wanted to create within the first 5 or 10 minutes of the film. The whole spectrum of the types of images, the types of sound and music and way of editing, for you to be comfortable with it, and then being able to go more in depth into the story. Is there more to say? Well, of course, my father's philosophical monologue is kind of interesting. But you want to say anything about that? The paradox? No?
It's not interesting.
It's not interesting.
Do you think it is interesting?
I thought it was interesting.
What did I say then, by the way?
You said that the picture you're looking at, the child is the father of the person you have become.
Oh, yeah.
It's very complex.
Because you would say when you're young, you are young and you don't know much. And then later on you get wise, and so then later on you are the father of the child. No, it is the other way around.
Yeah.
Because the child is the older one.
Yeah.
And I'm 70.
Yeah.
But I'm only 1 year 70.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm in the.
You grew out of the child. No, I mean, you're saying the child is the father of the person you have become.
The child is much wiser than the person you are later.
Yeah.
So it's not the other way around.
No.
That's a kind of philosophy of mine.
Yeah.
Later on, after the college, we can
go into it with the whiskey and beer.
But there is something paradoxical about your role, because you're a psychologist, you're a specialist about emotions.
Yes.
And yet here you are not talking as a specialist, you're talking as someone who hasn't dealt with his emotions in a way, or hasn't resolved it in a way that a psychologist probably would like to do. And here comes interference, Mr. Interference, with the camera. I mean, how did it feel at the beginning, creating this odd dialogue where your son, source of emotion, is also the filmmaker?
Well, I was so glad that, well, maybe that's it's not maybe the right thing he feels, but I'm so glad and so grateful that we at least had a kind of relation in which we could say anything to each other. So when he puts a camera on me, I don't feel provoked or I don't feel intimidated, and I just say what I think he wants to hear or what I think he's after at. So there's no border. But when I talk with my mother, I only have to be diplomatic. Immediately feeling where the sensitive issues are, what I can say, what I not can say. There's always a kind of minefield. You see, so when he came with the camera to my home, I thought, okay, that's his way of doing it, it's his profession, and if he wants to know something, okay, he can get it. No problem at all. But what he was doing with his film, I don't know, because in the past we discussed things, of course, but not this film. So I was completely.
There was a conscious thing I did. I didn't involve him in the film process.
No.
Yeah,
No.
I thought it would just have too much effect on everything, because what I already felt, and you're saying that you were very open to me, very honest. You always felt comfortable, but I felt through the film, and that's the power of a camera. You feel you can do more than you're able to, or than you have courage without the camera. I felt I needed to go further with the camera than I would go without the camera, concerning painful stuff. And only the camera gave me the courage to actually do that. And also, in a way, the necessity to be doing it. Because I thought immediately from the beginning, of course, I'm like you, conditioned by your education. You have to get somewhere, you have to get your protagonist out of their comfort zones. And maybe that's a bit easier to do with a person that's not related to you, that you don't feel that deep history or deep loyalty to, as with your own father and my grandmother. But I felt a big conflict between me as a son and me as a filmmaker, because I felt I was using the camera, well, not as a weapon, but as a metaphorical crowbar to get into the insides of my father, especially when he became very psychological and very rational and nuanced about what he was thinking or feeling. Because he's a professional psychologist, it's great to talk about the human condition, about ourselves, about analyzing stuff. But when it comes to personal emotions that are not related to your profession, it made it very hard for me to get there. Yeah, really? Like the moments.
Sorry, did I make it difficult for you then?
Yes.
Really? Oh.
No. But what I'm saying is you didn't make it difficult for me. But the conflict between me just respecting your privacy and believing that if you don't want to tell me something, it's okay. It's your choice to rationalize or nuance everything, and at another time be very open about your emotions. But I felt that by making the film, I had the responsibility of going past that. And in that sense, the mask became, for me, metaphorical. Again, that the mask that your mother wears is appearance, is outer appearance. In a way, you're masked by your own rationality and by your own way of analyzing everything. That detaches you sometimes from yourself. Oh, yeah. And I needed, with the camera, to go beyond that. Yeah. And that made me feel sometimes very awkward, because, when you see the film tonight, you'll see my father crying. I haven't seen my father cry maybe more than 4 times. 2 of them are in my film, so...
Okay, I promise you I cry more. Sorry.
No, and it's not that I wanted him to cry, it's that I... I wanted to get to that sensitive, raw area of you that I needed to go there because I felt that was the core of everything. And that felt like sometimes even an ethical dilemma, because again, what gives you the right with the camera to do all this? You have to, in the end, you have to trust your own ethics, your own sincerity, and trust your ambition to hopefully make something worthwhile, something that respects the protagonists. But making these kind of films there's many risks, of course, and many loyalty dilemmas that arise, many things that even, and that's maybe something else with this film, you demand from your, I'll show you the next clip then. You demand, no, I'm actually literally quoting almost my grandmother, but you're demanding total openness and vulnerability from your subjects, even if you're making a film about somebody who's not related to you. You're demanding it because you need to get the full spectrum of one's emotions. But if you make a personal documentary, in many ways, at least in my instance in this film, I needed also in a way to get myself out of my comfort zone. But how do you get yourself out of your comfort zone when you're the director? The director has control over his material, has control over his protagonist in a way, in storytelling way. But how do you find a way? How do you escape from your comfort zone? And that's very difficult. And that's what I feel sometimes is at stake in these kind of films. That you feel you get everything from the protagonist, but the guy who's actually, intervening, the person behind the camera is safe and sound behind the camera. And that's the tension, and that's what makes it interesting. But I'll show you another clip, or do you have a...
No, I've got a question which you don't have to answer now. It's back to the personal film and the process of making it. The difference between when you're filming and when you're editing.
Yeah.
And also probably I imagine kind of, that overlap. I mean, does it get any easier, different, kind of the two...
With editing?
With editing, yes. How does it feel like living with that material for months and months and months?
Well, I think it's actually connected to what I just said. When I was looking at the rushes, looking at the raw material, the unedited material, I was so confronted by myself, by my own weakness, by my dishonesty, by the way that I was protecting myself. Didn't go far enough. Not only concerning my father, but most of all concerning my grandmother. That I think it changed me. It changed everything. It changed my own role in the film. It changed my position in the film, the perspective on the story. It changed how I was shooting afterwards, because that's very important to understand. I was shooting, editing, and writing the film in parallel at the same time. It wasn't possible in any other way. I didn't want to wait with shooting after I had made the script, because I felt the story is it's evolving at this moment. So I was doing all these things at the same time, finding a cinematic form, for instance, finding a structure, finding my own voice. It all happened at the same time. But relating back to your to your question, I think the edit. Normally, the edit is structuring what you shot, but it was also structuring what I was going to shoot. It also influenced how I shot and when I shot, and it was very difficult. The edit, I think I spent 35 weeks with a professional editor, like being paid. And I think I spent at least that amount of time on my own editing and pre-editing, and and the luxury problem I had was that I was the fourth generation of capturing family footage, so I had a lot of material, especially by my dad, on VHS, on Super 8, tape recordings that I all needed to hear or at least see to be able to say, okay, it's relevant or it's not relevant. So I think that made it a huge editing exercise. Yeah. And I changed editor as well. I needed to, yeah.
Okay, next clip.
Yeah? Yeah. Like I said, I started making this film really by focusing especially on my grandmother and my dad. And of course, my dad is closest to me. Through him, I became interested in my grandmother. So it was an obvious relation. Also in the film, an obvious way that I would shoot both of them. But there was another person that was maybe even more mythical or mystical as my grandmother. And that's as my uncle, is the brother of my father, René. And René became, also through editing, but also in shooting, more and more relevant to the story, much more than I had expected. So I'll show you his a short clip in which, in the film, for the first time, I introduce that third protagonist. Can we? Yeah, perfect. The volume is here, no? Yeah, very sensitive.
Great maximum, but
Oh, yeah?
still very weak. So.
Kijk, weet je waarom ik eigenlijk in Zuid-Afrika ben? Door hem ook.
Ja?
Hij heeft me zoveel verwijten gedaan. Hij heeft beschuldigd dus heel wat dingen. Dat ik het niet meer kon vertrouwen.
Van wat heeft u?
Dat was René.
Ja?
Mm. En nou ziet hij die dingen zoals ik het voel, anders. Op een andere nummer, of je het wil noemen. Hij ziet het, hij kan misschien mij nou vergeven, of tenminste mij anders zien.
Het was de allereerste keer dat ik oma René's naam hoorde uitspreken. Oom René was een vreemde voor mij. Een buitenstaander binnen de familie. Mijn vader had me verteld dat René in een psychiatrische inrichting had gezeten toen zijn moeder vertrok naar Zuid-Afrika. Vanaf het moment dat mijn vader hem daar weghaalde, nam hij de zorg voor hem over.
Ja, ik ben het René. Dag René. Zo. Gekke binnenkomst, hè? Ja. Zo, dan ga ik ook even bij zitten. Nou, dit is een beetje de situatie waarin we eigenlijk elke week met elkaar praten, hè? Ja. Jij zit daar en ik zit hier. Misschien kun je mij ook even opnemen, zoals ik hier altijd zit. Ja. En dan zie je van binnen een rood lampje branden. Ja, dat zie je. Klopt dat? Ja. Nou, dan neemt hij nou op. Nou, dit is dus de bekende situatie waarin we altijd met elkaar praten. Ik zit dan hier en René zit daar. En nu zit René dus met een camera voor zijn neus. Nou, het is nu 11:30 inmiddels. René, zullen we eens even die koffer openmaken met de kleren van mami? Ja. Gaat hem er even uit hoor. Nee, maar zit dit allemaal netjes gevouwen en dan krijg je het niet meer in. Nee, maar dat hoeft ook niet, want je moet het ook aandoen. Je moet het ook niet netjes in die koffer laten zitten, want het moet allemaal uit. Misschien dat je even één ding kunt aandoen straks. Dat mami het even kan zien, hoe het je staat. Maar dat duurt wel weer een tijd. Het duurt een tijd voor ik het aan heb. Dat wordt wel ingewikkeld hoor, allemaal. Nou, misschien alleen dat pak. Ja. Hè? Ik wou mami nog bedanken voor de kleren die ze mij gestuurd heeft. Nou, hartelijk bedankt. Ik vind het een beetje onnatuurlijk om zo in de camera iemand te bedanken die er niet is. Maar ik wou mami dus bedanken voor de kleren. En alvast hartelijk feliciteren met de verjaardag. Ik schrijf misschien nog een kaartje. Maar ik wou haar nu alvast feliciteren met haar verjaardag. Nou, dit is mijn kamer dus. Ja.
Als puber begon mijn vader een dagboek. Het is zomer. Ik ben jarig. Ik ben 18 jaar. Mijn grootste wens is dat het komende jaar gelukkiger zal zijn dan dat wat achter me ligt. Wat deugt er eigenlijk aan onze familie? Mami kreeg een hysterische woedeaanval, waarbij ze me verweet geen karakter te hebben. René is tenminste recht door zee. Eerlijk. Misschien een beetje te eerlijk. Mami slingert René alles naar het hoofd. Ze beschuldigt hem ervan dat hij haar haat en haar leven zo ondraaglijk mogelijk probeert te maken. Ik begrijp niet dat René dit volhoudt. Hij heeft een kleurloos leven. Geen vrienden, geen niks. Door niemand geaccepteerd. Mami vernielt hem. Voor zover hij nog niet kapot is.
So that's René now. So René became, during the process of, like I said, everything was parallel. So I was researching, I was shooting, I was writing the application for the Dutch Film Institute all at the same time. And René more and more popped out in every aspect of the story. So I think what happened is that what I couldn't find in my grandmother and couldn't find in my father, I found that in René. In a way, he wasn't accusing anyone. He was very dry, very factual about everything, very unfiltered in his emotions, like you will see later. And he was just totally being René, no mask. And that's not judging you guys, it's just like an observation. It's not good or bad, it's just that he became a very important third person in the triangle, and a very meaningful person that was in the film becoming or representing the heart of our family, in a way representing the soul, also the soul of what went wrong, the core to what went wrong in our family, almost embodying it. And of course, it was interesting to, through this film, start to read your diaries and to see your footage in which you shot René, because I think, yeah, okay, it's VHS, but the way you shot René is almost like a documentary maker. It's strange. It's in scenes, and it's even in close-ups and shots. It was like you were documenting
Don't give
your
me
brother.
ideas.
No. No, but I never asked you. Why did you shoot him like that at that moment?
Well, I think it is a very practical reason. My mother gave him clothes, and I thought maybe this is a good. Well, okay, it's a very practical reason, just to show my mother how grateful René is and what he is doing with her clothes. But maybe in another level, I try to bring them together. Because I told before that René is actually my father, he's an older brother, and my mother is my mother. And they are the fundaments, the foundation of my life, in fact. I had no other people, there was no alternative. So if they would come together, that would give me a kind of healing a feeling of things are all right. Now my life can begin, something like that.
As if your separated parents got together again.
Yeah.
And when did this separation? Did it start like because in your diaries, you're very harsh in a way, and you're also harsh to yourself, saying you have no character.
Mm.
And
no, that's true.
You have no character.
But now I've got a character. Watching your film now, since last year I've got a character.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you very much for my character.
So it's a very intimate moment we're creating here. You have a question, finally.
Watching the clips about your mum, a couple of things came into my head and I couldn't shake them off. The first thing is, you were saying that she was resisting your attempt to get close to her. She was resisting your filming agenda. Well, you didn't say that in so many words, but that's what you were implying. And I'm wondering whether actually the very fact of you filming made it impossible for her to consent. I mean, after all, she wasn't part of the project as such. She was really the target of the project. So the first question in my mind was, if there were no camera, if you were not actually making a film, would that be different? Would she be, relating to you in a completely different way? So that's the first question. The second one, I mean, as I was watching more, I was thinking, now, you keep using the phrase masking and unmasking. How do we know, how do you know when actually you have managed to unmask somebody? What would you find that you would say, yes, that's it, I've unmasked that person?
Yeah.
And the other more philosophical question is, what is the reality? What is real? What is not real? Is the mask not the real thing? If we try to unmask somebody, would we actually find something real behind the mask?
You're totally right. That's you're explaining the whole development of the film, and that's the whole conclusion of the film. That there is no truth. There's no one truth. There's no two truths. There is no truth. There's no illusion. The whole idea about unmasking was extremely naive. The idea I had in the beginning. So that develops. I give up because there's no unmasking to be done. It's just maybe even more ambiguous than it was in the beginning. And a very, very good question or remark. That what is, what part of a person is this so-called mask, and what then is the real person? Isn't this just like a limitation in our language, or a way of defining things that is wrong? Because in a way, and that's also part of the film, and I hope you will be able to see it tonight, that of course we're calling it a mask because we long for something different. So in a way we're not accepting the person that's in front of us. Maybe it's more about us than about the person itself. So we're calling it a mask because we like the person to be different, the unmasked person, you know, but it's a concept. The person is the person. You know, the mask is as part of the person as whatever other part is. So I think you're totally right, and that's also how what I just said. The film confronted me with my very limited ways of seeing things in the beginning, and I wanted the audience to be a part of that. That whole development from targeting the film at her, like you said, like almost with a kind of a vengeance or a kind of an anger. My editor was actually using the metaphor, like the beginning of, like Tom, the filmmaker, the son, the grandson, in the beginning of the film, or the first half, is the person who, in the name of his father, goes to his grandmother to scalp her and bring back the skin or the hair to his father to show him, I have done that's the water. And that's what I also wanted to create with the audience, to almost become one with that accusing, with looking at her in that sense as the perpetrator, as the one that in a way we're all, me, my father, René, we're all victims of. But then, at a certain point in the film, another door opens, and then you feel confronted by your limited ideas of good and bad, right and wrong, true, false, you know, the simplicity. And I think, well, at least what I tried to do, my attempt in this film, was to create this ambiguity again at the end of the film, in which you don't know, in which there's no right and wrong, there's no good and bad. The only way of dealing with this is accepting and taking responsibility of your own life. And it sounds like a super cliche, but that was the only conclusion I could have after this journey. There was no one answer. There was no unmasking to be done. But to use this saying of the mask in the beginning as a kind of a spark to start things, to move things. That's why I used it in that way. Only to conclude that, yeah.
Still, Tom, if I may add to it, I think you feel intuitively if people are lying or are playing a role, are not sincere. You feel it. And that's a kind of mask too, because you have to maybe, if I would lie to you, if I would not be sincere, I have to protect myself. I don't want to see you, to let you see through my masks, through my image, what I want to have to defend myself. So in that, and I think my mother's life is actually one big lie. So in that instance, I would say yes, she's masking herself all the time, and if you come too close, then she is fighting you. Then she is attacking you. Don't be like that. Don't be so. You are my son. Keep quiet, and so on. And and in the film, you see there are moments that Tom is attacked. Tom is attacked, and then you can wonder if this is now a kind of unmasking, Tom unmasking her, or is that the real grandmother? So to defend the suggestion that there are no masks, there are no roles what people play, there are no people whose life is one big lie, or one big lie even to themselves. I'm not sure about that.
But I think it's more nuanced. But apart from that, I like this ambiguity, because that's all what we, in a way, what I was confronted by, that it's not so clear. It's not clear. It's not an American movie in which I can give like this ultimate answer to everything, and this is already showing that. But to me, I think what you, I don't know if I'm right, but if this way of being, like grandmother's way of being, of sometimes manipulating or forcing you to be different than what you like, if that's her, in what way could you still be calling it a mask? If it's her, if it's fully her, you know, and that's an interesting philosophical question, because in what way is there a difference between the front and the back? Is there a difference, or has she become one with the person? Of course, like we all are conditioned by circumstances combined with genes, but in what way can you make such a structural difference between the two?
Yeah, but if you say Renee has no mask, then there is a mask apparently in other people then. Not in Renee, but in other people there are masks. All right?
Yeah, well...
Okay, we go on.
No, I'm thinking of it. You're right. I'm not being very consequent. What do you call it? But sorry?
Consistent.
Consistent, which is of course this ambiguity I was talking about. No, but the thing with Renee is that at one part of him is totally unexpected. It's surprising all the time, like the scene I'm going to show you. But at the same time, you feel he's not holding back. He's never holding back, and that's something you always felt with Marianne, with Grandma, that there were things that were supposed to be left alone. And that's why the emotional scene on the boat, I won't show you the whole film, but hopefully you'll be able to see it tonight. But there's a scene in which I felt, okay, now she's... now she's... now she's being fully open. Now she's not afraid to show her deepest emotions. And like you said, there's a moment in which she fights me, in which I felt the total opposite. I felt that there was no understanding between us. She didn't understand me, I didn't understand her. I was disappointed because I had experienced that fully emotional, open scene with her. But still, both moments were with the same person. So which one is true? Which one is unmasked and which one is, or is there no difference? Is it just part of the same spectrum of her character? So maybe we should just leave the whole mask definition.
Next chapter.
It's a language thing. Do you have any questions now?
No, I mean, I think the question of the mask is really important, because in a filmic term, we are talking about the inside and the outside. So how, I mean, as a filmmaker, when we're observing and we're filming, we're from the outside. And yet all the time we're aspiring to be able to go and be in the inside. But what's in between those two, in a way, is the film language that you're talking about. How do you construct it? How do you create meaning out of that? And every filmmaker, of course, has its own interpretation. And of course here it's kind of really interesting to see your interpretation of that thin line between the inside and the outside.
Yeah, and like my grandmother says in the beginning already, which is almost a cliche, the truth is subjective. Of course, she's totally right, and the whole film is in a way one big subjective exercise of me It's the way how the way I look at them it's mirroring me, and you could call it a narcissistic exercise. But then every documentary is a narcissistic exercise because we're in many other ways pretending not to be showing things from our point of view, but it's fake. It's not. It doesn't work like that. So.
I mean, one element which is fascinating about the character of your grandmother is the fact that she's a woman who inflicted so much pain around her, and yet there isn't one moment of regret or responsibility towards the pain that she inflicted around. And for me, I mean, to hear that in this tiny, pretty old lady is nearly as bad as hearing that from Hitler. If you see what I mean, where we all have our own responsibilities towards what we do in life, and some people assume those responsibilities also have an amazing way of constructing those big walls around them and to engage with it.
Well, and that's I think what made it so impossible for you to write this book as well. Because I think you expected. My father. That's why I, in a way, started making this film, because my father retired as a psychologist, and his first new project was writing a biography on Marianne. And I found that very interesting. That's why I went with them to shoot it. That was my first time alone with them as being a grown-up. But it was impossible for you to write that book because, like you said this afternoon during the lunch, you were still the son, still the child, too much. You wanted to be professional about it, wanted to write a story about her life, about her history, but you were in relation to her at the moment itself, while writing, while interviewing her, you were too much the son. And
she behaved too much like my mommy. And I was too much her Robbie. Robbie and mommy interviewing each other, or Robbie interviewing mommy, and not getting really to the point of getting the sincerity on the surface. My mother intimidating me, and I reacting on her like a son towards his mother, and I stopped the whole attempt, and decided to stop this project for a few years, because I thought myself, I'm not grown up enough. I cannot handle this woman. I'm too much intimidated by her way of doing, and I'm too sensitive for all these kind of behaviors and manipulation and so. I cannot. And Tom could. Tom was.
I thought I could. That's why I started this project, because I thought, okay, I have more distance. I am the grandson. I don't have that past with her. I can hopefully be more. There you have it again. Objective about it, only to find myself totally being pulled inside the story, and also being confronted with my own subjectivity, in a sense to the story that I felt also during editing. I felt always so close to my father's story that it was also part of the struggle to detach myself from the story of my father, to be able to make the film, to be able to also create empathy or sympathy for her, to explore her story, and to in the end not fall into the trap of making this film a kind of like a vengeance project, and killing her through this film. So in that sense, I thought I was further away, only to get myself right in the middle of it. And I think the biggest struggle of making the film was trying to find my own perspective on the whole story, on the family. I think in that sense it's a coming of age, in which I maybe of all the protagonists in the film, I am developing the most from behind the camera. It's not so my grandmother is exactly the same in the beginning as in the end. My father is, René is. I think I changed in that sense. Not saying that I am the main protagonist, but still. So I think acknowledging that, being honest about it and not running away from difficulties, I think that's the most important thing of making these kind of films. Because I think in those difficulties, there's the essence. That's where you need to go. And it's hard, it's difficult, it's uncomfortable, it's awkward, it's ethically really difficult sometimes. But you need to go there. And yeah, in that sense, that's why the film made such an impact on my life. Also just as a normal human being, not only as a filmmaker. Yeah.
That's why it's universal and not just a family film.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, because of course that's the main question we always get asked, if it's through the film fund or through teachers or through fellow students or fellow filmmakers. Why? You know, why would I care? Why would that story of yours be of any interest to me? You know, I don't care about your family. Who's your father? Who's your grandmother? And you have, especially with these kind of films. I was really conditioned at the Dutch Film Academy with the idea of making personal films, rather not do it. Just, you know, find subjects that you really care about, but don't go on that road.
It's meant to be an easy way out. It's meant to be for people who don't have anything to say, making personal films.
Well, it's strange because that's sometimes what people think. Yeah, it's easy, but I've never made such a difficult film. No, I now think of my previous film as being easy. But at the moment when I was making that film, of course, I was struggling. But I was struggling more on the level of being a professional filmmaker, trying to structure reality, how to react on things that go different than you expect, how to find a story, how to, well, those things. But the emotional complexity of such a film is unequaled. Finding out the project.
Doen we nog een hoofdstukje?
Yeah, you want another clip?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want another clip? Another clip?
Well, I don't know.
Yes.
More questions or another clip or anything?
Would you say making your personal film would influence the way you would direct films in the future?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a good question. I actually had also an example, but maybe you've seen the film, all of you already. It's Grey Gardens by the Maisels brothers. Maybe have you seen it? No? Nobody? Yeah.
A few.
Okay, a few. You should see it because it's a very important film in documentary tradition, I think. I'm referring to that film because I think they went out. It's a film about a symbiotic relationship of a mother and a daughter, and living in this deteriorated house that used to be like totally posh and upper class. They're related to the what's her name again? The wife of Kennedy. Onassis, yeah. I won't tell the whole story, but the filmmakers, you clearly see it, went out to make a direct cinema kind of film, observational, just scenes, just being there and observing. What happened through the film is that they were pulled inside their own project, and they're struggling with it. You feel that they're trying to be silent, not answering when one of these characters addresses them from in front of the camera. But actually that it becomes a very important and also meaningful layer in the film, because the story in a way is about the daughter longing to break away out of this symbiotic relationship. She wants to escape, but she's not able to. She's been caught in this situation too long. You feel she's going to end up there. She's going to die in that old deteriorated house with her old mother. But in a way she's seeing an escape. She's seeing a door in the two filmmakers. She's even starts to seduce one of the two filmmakers. With one of them, I think it's the sound man. She says, "Well, yeah, the way you dress yourself is a little bit old-fashioned, a bit conservative. But you, Albert, yeah, I think you're looking good." And you know, instead of cutting all these scenes away and pretending again to be not there, to be invisible, of not taking part in the reality you're actually creating, because you're there. And a very good thing they did, they gave all the material to editors. They didn't edit the film themselves. The editors, great editors, they used this material, all of it, I think, to create that kind of a meaning to this relationship that was developing from in front of the camera to behind the camera. And it became essential for understanding the protagonist. I'm making a super detour, but the way in which I became involved in the story that I didn't want to get involved in this film made me realize that what many of us try to do, or our ambitions as filmmakers, is to try to be invisible and try to capture reality as it gets to us. And it's one big illusion. I don't want to be like prophesizing here. But it's creating a wrong kind of illusion, and it's not only dishonest, it's like taking away sometimes, in many ways, an essential part of the story. An essential part of filmmaking, to me, is the relationship you form with your protagonist. I can only talk about myself, but I would never be able to make a film about a person I don't care about. I would never be able to do that. Even the protagonist in my previous film, I cared about. I also hated her, but I loved her deeply. So that made it to me, and this film in that sense even more, made it clear to me that, okay, the relationship I have and the fascination I have for a protagonist is everything. It's even more important than the story. The story will evolve from this first very basic relationship I have. And secondly, the relationship is probably the kind of relationship could be a very valuable, meaningful element of the film that sometimes I'm not aware of in the beginning of the film, but might evolve into something that's really a part of the story. Even though the way of making the film is observational, is not intervening, is not, well, literally intervening, not interviewing, it's not creating scenes or organizing the film. Still, I think the relationship to me now is much more essential, and I became much more aware of that. Yeah. Sorry, it's a huge answer for...
Misschien, maybe Tom, you can reveal what happened to you personally, how you were pulled in the film.
Yeah, if there's no other...
Or don't you... do you like more that people see the film? Yeah, because that's a very interesting part of the film. Well, but it's up to you.
I don't know, who's planning to see the film tonight? 2, 3. Not everyone. Yeah, it's a bit of a spoiler, I think. Well, it's not a spoiler. It's just that then I give away so much already. Then it's maybe
Okay,
don't.
Were you going to show the clip of Grey Garden?
I was, yeah. Shall I just? But it's just like a short preview. It's one of the first scenes of their film, in which the relationship between the filmmakers and the protagonist is already a little bit affirmed.
David, you look absolutely terrific. Honestly, you've got like glue on. Well, Al, you're still. Mother says you're very conservative. Brooks, everything looks wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. This is the best thing to wear for the day. You understand? Yeah. Because I don't like women in skirts. And the best thing is to wear pantyhose or some pants under a short skirt, I think. Then you have the pants under the skirt, and then you can pull the stockings up over the pants underneath the skirt. And you can always take off the skirt and use it as a cape. So I think this is the best costume for the day. Okay. I have to think these things up, you know. Mother wanted me to come out in a kimono, so we had quite a fight. So what did you do? Photograph Brooks cutting right down here?
Yeah, I think through the jungle.
Oh, for goodness sakes. What do you want to do now? Where do you want to go? Upstairs? You want to go up and photograph it from the top porch? Okay. I got a photograph from the top now, Brooks.
It's a beautiful garden back here.
See the wall garden? Oh, you mean the patio?
Yeah.
You mean this? Oh, that's a Spanish wall garden over there, you know.
Oh, yeah.
The Hills put that in. They imported everything from Rome. Mrs. Hill, she was a famous horticulturist. That was one of the famous gardens of America. Brooks, next summer, if we're all living, I think a vegetable garden would be a good thing in here.
We'll get enough sunlight in here.
Yeah, Mother says she doesn't mind if you have to cut down some privet for the garden.
Be nice.
Yeah. Because food's going up. We heard that on the radio last night. Do you think my costume looked all right for Brooks? I think he was a little amazed.
He's probably seen it.
No, this is the revolutionary costume. I never wear this in East Hampton.
He seems okay. He seems like he can handle it.
You can't be too careful. You know what I mean? That was the original living room. You know, people go back to a kitchen now. Though the washing machine was always put in the maid's dining room. You know, the wash tubs are in the maid's dining room. It's very difficult to keep the line between the past and the present. You know what I mean? It's awfully difficult.
Yeah, that last line was very essential.
The line between the past and the present. Because it's the main conflict of the whole film. But it's very subtle. It's really in between the lines that the whole story evolves. I wanted to show this film because it had a huge impact on me because it's in a way a very weird film, very funny in a tragical way, but it uses many forms inside one film. At the moment when this film came out, it was a huge, scandal, because the filmmakers were criticized with showing these people without protecting them, showing they should have protected the mother and the daughter because they were so open, so honest on camera. They weren't aware of their own vulnerability. That was the criticism they got in newspapers. The funny thing is that the daughter herself wrote a huge letter to that newspaper explaining that this is how we are. We're proud of who we are. Even though you think we are fat and we have these things that you don't like, this is who we are. And I think we're portrayed and represented in a correct way. And we totally support the film. But it's fascinating because in a way things change, in other ways things don't change because we feel uncomfortable with a certain kind of vulnerability in films. I wanted to show this clip also connected to another clip because those two films were very influential for myself in making my own personal film. So shall I continue to... Because it's a very different... Do you know Alan Berliner? Yes, a little bit? Yes. Please just say yes. Come on. It's in form and in many ways a very different film than the one I just showed you. But we'll first look at it and then talk.
The story is told about a man who went to an artist and said, I want to have a picture made. The artist turned to him and said, look, there are two kinds of pictures. There's a portrait and a landscape. He said, well, which is cheaper? The artist said, the landscape. He said, well, can you make a landscape of me? Testing 1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3. How long do you think this is going to take, Alan?
About an hour. Tell me about this picture. It looks like you're about to sing. It looks like you're about to sing or give a speech somewhere.
No, that's not so. I'm just posing.
For whom? For
I'm
what?
just posing for the picture to be taken.
There's no story behind the image?
Well, you want me to make up stories? Alan, before we go any further, let me tell you something. I'm just an ordinary guy who's led an ordinary life. I was in the army, I got married, I raised a family, worked hard, I had my own business. That's all. That's nothing to make a picture about.
Someone in the audience is watching right now and saying, why am I here watching this film about this guy?
I would answer too, because I don't know what the hell they're doing there. I'm being honest with you.
You should be honored.
I'm not.
Your life not only can be...
My life is nothing. My life is no different from I don't know how many billions of people's. Who the hell would care about Oscar Berliner? Who the hell am I? You know, it's ridiculous.
Everyone has a life that has something special about it.
No.
Your life has nothing special?
No.
Nothing.
Look.
How could you be so convinced about that?
You're trying to make something of nothing.
You're my father. I have to do it. I need to do it.
You don't have to do it.
I have to do it.
And you're going to do what you want to do, whether I want you to do it or don't want you to do it. I'm telling you, you're wasting your time.
What's the matter?
Nothing. What happens now?
I just want to be open and honest right up front. That I want to know everything there is to know about you and our family.
So it's a total different approach of telling a story. But this, the character of his father, Oscar Berliner, to me was such a powerful character. Why? Because he doesn't he doesn't want to cooperate in a way that his son is expecting from him. But his son is clever enough to see the value of that, to actually, as a kind of engine for the film, and finds a metaphor in that, using the boxing match, the rounds. So to me, Oscar Berliner, of course, is a totally different guy than my grandmother. But in a way, their way of resisting to open up reminded me a lot of my grandmother, and made me think of her hopefully slowly opening up, or be open about the things that she wasn't prepared to talk about in the beginning of the film. At least form a kind of a development into creating some moment or some point in which she does or she did open up in the film. Apart from that, I hope you're able to see more films of Alan Berliner, because he's a great editor, and he always finds great metaphors, funny or tragic or whatever, in material that doesn't have any meaning on itself, but creates it or edits it in a way in which it becomes very meaningful and very profound already. These two films made me think, okay, there is a way of tackling this very complex story of my own family. I have the courage to pursue this, because you see in Alan Berliner's film that he's actually able to tell the whole story, even though his father doesn't see what he's seeing, doesn't see the necessity or the relevance of the story. This weird relationship between the protagonist and the filmmaker is actually something that's interesting. It's actually something very meaningful. That's why I wanted it to show you, because these two films were also for me a reference to point out in applications for like film funds or institutes, that there were these examples of other films that addressed the same themes and in very different ways, but well, it has been done. So any questions or any, yeah?
Another question. Obviously your grandmother wasn't going to give up the game. You know, she's told you clearly you're not going to get what you want from me. But in the first instance, what had you communicated to her that you actually wanted when you started, you know, even before you started, you pulled out your camera?
Yeah.
What was that initial negotiation? Because she seems, you know, at least her masked self seems very comfortable in front of the camera and is interacting with you, and she's performing for you. Mm-hmm. What was her understanding of what she was giving you?
Yeah, well, I have to tell you a little bit of the background of her story. She used to be a famous model in the 50s, so she was very used to camera lenses, attention, and she knew the power of the image. And that's something that you also see in how she behaves.
Her playing the camera.
Yeah. So in that sense, it made it interesting, to say the least, sometimes very difficult because of this over-conscious behavior of or reacting on the camera. Apart from that, especially after what happened during the film, after her pulling me inside the film through this event that happened that I won't show you now because it gives away, well, no, it doesn't give away the film, it's just there's, for some people, something left for tonight. Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah.
What were you asking from her?
Yeah. The mere fact that these things were happening, that there was this unclarity also in our relationship. What are you doing here? The reason why I went there was that my father stopped writing his biography and stopped communicating with her altogether. He didn't want any contact at that moment. It was only a few months later in which I received an SMS from her on my 30th birthday saying, "Dear Tom, congratulations with your birthday, and I have an important question to ask you. Can you come to South Africa to help me with my will, with my testament?" And it was only months after my father had cut all the ties, so it was too coincidental to be a coincidence. No, it wasn't a coincidence, of course. So I explained her, yes, I will help you, but I will bring my camera and I want to shoot you. I want to start filming you, as I had been filming her with my father together 3 years before. Of course, she's not a documentary maker. She only knows lenses, or she refers to lenses as showing her in the best way possible, like in her most glamorous way. So that became some kind of a tension in which I needed to remind her all the time what my agenda was with this film. And reminding her that I wasn't going to make a film about only the the glamour and the success she had as a model, but I also wanted to get into the shady part of our family, the things that weren't so happy. Like I said in the beginning, the uncomfortable things, the things that weren't talked about. And I had to repeat that over and over and over again, especially also to be comfortable myself with filming her and asking her what I asked. Because I felt that the moment that she drifted into this fantasy again, the Hollywood feature film about the grand diva, the model, she would be totally disappointed by the reality of the film. It would be a totally different film. So it's also in a scene in the film itself in which this is a confrontation. between her fantasy, also her fantasy about me, about who I am to her, and the reality is it's a difficult word, but at least my intentions, my expectations of what we were doing, actually. And I now feel, referring also back to you, that being honest is in any way, even if it's not your own family, but it's your protagonist or the subject you're filming, being honest is always the best. Even though you think you're influencing the situation, you might make the protagonist too conscious of why you're filming him or her. I think still in the end of the day it's the best thing to do. To be totally open about what you're doing and what you're planning to do and why you're interested. Because, and that's also something I only experienced through making 2 long documentaries, I began to understand that by explaining it, what my fascination is, the person also becomes conscious of that fascination and might bring up things that I would never have thought about, that are totally in the same focus of my film. And you can actually have a kind of a collaboration instead of you being the almighty director that controls, like a god, controls the story, and you have your protagonist being like the puppet that dances for you. It can be more equal without you losing your film or your story. But it's a tension, of course. It's always a tension. It's sometimes it feels totally what do you call it? As a what do you call it? A contradictionary. Not intentions. Like, for instance, the protagonist of my previous film was living in a ghost town at a certain moment. All her friends had left. The priest, the second protagonist of the film, had died already. There were activists coming into her town. There were graffiti artists. There were raving parties in the village. The village wasn't as the village that it used to be. The thing that happened during the film, in which I thought, oh my God, what's happening now, is that at a certain moment when I thought, and the crew thought, now the story is going to end because she's going to be evicted. That was the story I scripted. She went to the mayor's office, and we couldn't film inside the mayor's office. We stayed outside, and she came outside. She said, yeah, the mayor just told me I can stay for 5 more years. And we were like, oh my God, that's great. But of course, as a human, I would feel great. But as a director, as a filmmaker, it was the hell, because did it mean I had to film her 5 more years, and maybe after the 5 years, it would say that there would be another promise for another 5 years, and of course that can't be the way to work. So it confronted me with my own limited idea about the reality, and I needed to rethink everything. But I think in the end it made for a more intelligent, layered film than creating this oversimplified reality that was in my script. I don't know why I'm referring to this, but yeah, it's about being honest and about trying to be, in a way, try to keep your humanity in your filmmaking, which to me became more and more important, especially with such a delicate topic or subject. Yeah. More questions? Yes.
Has your grandmother seen the film?
Now I have to give away the end.
All right, sorry.
That was my ultimate dream, to show the film. Yeah, and that's still a big regret. Yeah, now you totally know what happened. Yeah, maybe if you come to the screening tonight, we can go into that detail. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you've got it from your father. Where did yours come from? Like something of capturing.
I actually don't know. I think it is somewhere in my genes or in the environment. Well, my mother, Tom told you just before that my mother was used to cameras and to lenses, and there are many pictures, many photographs in our house, mountains of photographs. So I think, well, that was my home situation. So I think I gradually, very organically, came into the same modus of picturing my family. Interestingly enough, is I never was a photographer. I immediately started with filming, not photos. And why? I think movement. That was very intriguing for me. Movement and the reality of moving life. So I started with sound recordings in the 70s with me and my wife on holidays, just recording sound from environment, from our conversation, and I thought it's very interesting to come back from holidays and then in your kitchen listening to sounds which were from the past weeks, when you were still in France or wherever. And from that on, sound, moving, only hearing sound, gradually it became to seeing sound and seeing movement. And then Tom was born, and I think from his first 3 days of his life, I think I 5 hours of filming.
Super 8, yeah.
I was so fascinated by him, by his being, by having a son, having life, having a new life around me. Tom.
Yeah, but I have to add that there was something very, I don't know. You explained it to me when actually Grandma was dying. We were both in South Africa, and I asked you the same question. Why do you think why did you shoot so much family footage? Why did you start shooting? And you gave me a different answer.
Oh, I think that's my mask.
No,
what did I answer then?
You told me something much more complex than I am able to quote now. But you said something that even before you filming, even before the time that you had a camera or sound equipment, you felt a great longing for creating roots, a kind of stability under your feet, of creating some sense of having a place, of having a life on which you could trust, on which you could build your own life. And that actually shooting your own children that you produced was creating this sense of creating a fundament or founding, what do you call it in English? Foundations underneath your own life. Like your children, you said, like the mere birth of me as your first child gave you a sense of structure, of purpose.
Now,
and
landing, actually.
Or landing.
Yeah.
So it's your own words.
Yeah. So Tom was because I have actually no real parents, but being a parent yourself, that's certainly giving you a sense of having parents.
Mm-hmm.
So my kids and you, my first child, gave me suddenly a parent as well. So I got a child and I got a parent, namely the parent in myself.
Mm-hmm. So
and maybe that process that was very interesting for me to capture.
And also the mere fact that when did you stop filming the moment that you divorced your wife, my mother, that at the same moment you stopped filming.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's of course very symbolic.
Yeah.
If the thing you point your camera at is falling apart, you stop. The thing the camera, the capturing doesn't serve the same purpose anymore. To me, it became so obvious almost when I saw all your like 30, 40, 50 hours of footage, and it all stopped. A huge amount just stopped at that very, very clear moment.
Yeah.
It was so much more than coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe to say the truth, it was also being so proud of my children and of having children in itself, and having healthy children, and having a home and having a normal home situation. Very proud of that, having had in my life, and then suddenly it is over because of the divorce. Then I'm not proud anymore. I'm struggling. I'm struggling then again, and finding another ground under my feet. I think that's it. So I'm not filming something I'm not proud of. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So that was another reason. Yeah.
You had a photo at the beginning with your great-grandfather as well.
Yeah.
Does he feature in your film?
Yeah, he does. He's part of the moment in which the very necessary door opens to her past, to her trauma, and in which we begin to experience her in a totally different way, going beyond the judgments, the accusations. He's very much a part of that. So his footage, it's actually a film still, it's not a photo. He filmed himself drinking a cup of coffee in a riding train, pretending not to film himself. You know, like a selfie in the 1920s. Yeah, I think that was a big discovery for me too. Like seeing him, and well, another, I don't know if it's coincidence or if it's very meaningful. He didn't shoot anyone except for himself, his travels and himself. Not his children, not his wife, not the other family, no, himself. And this combined with her story about her father, especially her relationship with her father, the trauma she had with him. I think that at least I hope that it makes you think as an audience that all these generations influenced each other so profound, well, so essentially, that in a way we're very close to each other, even though we're so much apart. It's 100 years of children in search of the love of their parents. Yeah, and actually the loss of their childhood ideal love. I think that's the main theme. Yeah.
Actually now I have two questions. One is, were you aware of that footage that your great-grandfather had shot when you started this process?
Well, like I said, the process didn't have a...
Of it didn't, I have seen your films.
Yeah.
I know that the significance wasn't there at the beginning of your
No.
film, but was the footage there at the begining? I mean, did you know about the footage at the beginning of your film?
I don't know when exactly I found the footage. I think it was somewhere around, well, I already had shot him and his mother in South Africa in 2007. I think I started to scan and to see all the family footage in 2010. So I was already calling this a project. But like I said, it wasn't like a linear process of writing, production, shooting, and editing. It was all at the same time. So I had the images of him at a much earlier stage than the interviews I did with her on the boat of course, there were, I think it was 2 years before I did that interview with her, I found that footage. But the meaning of the footage, it didn't have any meaning to me. It was just, oh, that's nice. My great-grandfather was also shooting. Yeah.
But, okay, so, and actually there are two questions. One is that, were you writing voiceover as you went along, or did you write it at the end of this?
Yeah.
That's one. And the other is, what would have been your ideal ending to the film? I mean, obviously once you reach an end, that is the end, but what were you hoping for? So sorry, two separate questions.
Well, the voiceover, like I said, I started this project being a very different kind of filmmaker, or at least I thought of myself as being a different filmmaker. So voiceover was the opposite of what I wanted. Doing interviews. So I think I started doing interviews earlier than when I started thinking about voiceover. And I was very judgmental about voiceovers. I didn't like it at all, the idea. And then again I thought, well, that's other filmmakers that use that means. And they're good at it. I will never be able to do it. And then at a certain moment, I felt I needed to just start doing it. So I started doing it. I started doing it in English, and I felt very uncomfortable doing it because I felt I was scripting too much. And then it was actually my girlfriend that told me just let the film roll and comment on your film. Don't start writing, just comment on what you see. Just comment on the emotions you feel when you see it, and start it from there. Just start doing it. And I think that was the way to do it for me. But it took many versions. And I made too much, I made too many voiceover moments in the film. I think the last month or month and a half of editing, I deleted almost all my voiceover pieces, because people around me were telling me it's not necessary. You're telling what we're seeing. So I was making a difference between what was really relevant and what was more intimate than only explaining. Of course, the film needed some explaining. I tried to find, of course, like I said, I love finding metaphors to tell certain things, or material, or I really tried hard to tell the story in its without the use of voiceover. But well.
I think it was really important.
You have to admit that you're a character. Yeah. And concerning the other question, that's what was it again?
It was what would you have?
The ending.
Were you hoping for that moment which you sort of describe at the beginning of the film, which is we fall into each other's arms, and everything will be all right?
Yeah.
That's what you were.
Well, like I explained, I had the. Yeah. No, like I said, at the beginning of the film, I was very naive compared to at the end of the film. So my personal development, not only in the film as a character, but also outside of the film, really changed.
Your goal was to unmask her. That's what your.
Yeah, yeah. I had the illusion I could do it.
And no, but what were you hoping to achieve by that? Were you hoping to achieve a family reunion?
Well, those are two questions, because are you asking what do I want to achieve as a person or as a filmmaker? Because it's different. No, as a filmmaker, of course, I'm making the film not for myself. I'm making it for an audience something to resonate with an audience that's not part of my own family. So something that touches on a universal theme. So in a way, I wanted to show the complexity of relations within 4 generations of a family, and the way in which a traumatized youth, or at least a love that's traumatized in early youth, influences. It goes on and on and on, and all the relationships in a way, well, no, I'm going to find that. So I want to tell a universal story in which you understand these people instead of judging. Already from the beginning, I didn't want to make a judgmental film. As a person, of course, I fantasized, just as I fantasized as a teenager that my parents would come together again and be married again. I fantasized in a naive way, of course now, about my family being able to reconnect again, and for them to not talk with me, the go-between, but talk to each other and fall into each other's arms, crying and being honest. And of course, that never happened.
That wasn't necessarily you didn't see that as a filmmaker. You weren't hoping. I'm trying to understand how divorced the filmmaker is from the person.
Well,
I think that's a big challenge, isn't it?
It is, and it's trying to get them as close to each other as possible. But in many ways, it's still many times a conflict if you're filming your own family or another subject, like we just discussed. So I think it's never static. It's dynamic. It's the same in how you define your boundaries. Where can I go in my interviews? How much further can I push her or him? Which is in every scene, in every situation is different. So in that sense, the film as it is now, in a way, is as close to me as a human as it can get. Because, well, actually because of the reactions on the film, I think I became, I trust now that the film is not judgmental, but it's you guys who decide on that. So I don't have control over your reactions. But I've had so many reactions on the film, and so many people react on it in a very emotional way, literally emotional way, that I'm now confident that, okay, the thing that I wanted as a filmmaker was to go beyond the judgments. The thing I wanted as a human being was to create understanding and a kind of a reconciliation. Of course, the end of the film, like you have seen, is different than like a Hollywood kind of reconciliation, but still, there's some kind of hope. It's not a Hollywood hope, it's not an end good, all good, but it's still, yeah. But yeah, it's in a way for you to decide, and I think that's the challenge also of making personal documentaries, to be okay with it, to accept it, and to detach yourself from it enough. Well, but it's rational. I'm not talking rational. I can't detach myself from my film. I can't sit in the screening room with people looking at this film. Still not today. It's almost a year ago since I premiered. So I'm hoping in the future I will be able.
I hope.
Yeah.
Together we managed it. Huh?
More questions or more? No, it's been enough. No, yeah, it's enough. It's enough.
Enough is enough.
Are there people that I asked you in the beginning? Are there people that have very specific questions concerning their own personal projects, or maybe it's too much to ask inside this classroom to go into that? Sorry?
I said, yeah, I'll email you.
Oh yeah, that's also. Yeah, so yeah, like you said, if you want to talk more or ask questions about the process, or I can only refer to my own experience. Again, I don't know the truth. It's just it's all about interpretation. But yeah, I'd be happy to react on. Yeah.
I can say that there are some wonderful personal films being developed amongst this crowd. And I wish they would share some of what they're going through, but I think they're probably a bit too shy. Never mind.
So thank you for your patience.
Yes, thank you audience, but thank you kind of Rob for being here, and thank you Tom for being here and being so honest.
Thank you for inviting us.
Often with kind of there's a process. It's a difficult film to make, but it's also a difficult film to carry on talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think, of course, like you you get taught in film schools, film can't be therapeutic, but actually it is. So in a way, talking about it.
Something happens.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten to say at the beginning that Family Affairs and this masterclass was organized in conjunction with the Mental Health Arts and Scottish Mental Health Arts and Film Festival. So it's a mouthful.
SMHA.
SMHA. That's even more kind of mysterious. But it's really important to have such festivals in order to start exploring difficult issues that we all kind of living or witnessing more and more in our societies in many ways. So that's amazing. So do come and watch the film Family Affairs at, is it 6 o'clock?
Yes.
Yes, at the Film House. And there will be another Q&A with the double act.
Another 2.5 hours of Q&A.
No, the Q&A will be short. But the film is really wonderful and you should have a look at it. So please, kind of in a second.
Thank you.